Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast. Today, I got to ask you a question. What do you think you get when you cross a business mogul, a surgical device inventor, and a woman who can talk to both your gallbladder and your dead grandmother? Well, today I'm introducing you to Julie Ryan, a self-described buffet of psychicness. She isn't your I've seen ghosts since I was 5 kind of psychic. She's built her career as a no-nonsense entrepreneur running 9 companies across 5 industries, while quietly mastering the art of scanning your body for illness, chatting with your pets, peeking at your past lives, and knowing exactly how close you are to the pearly gates. She turns her abilities on and off at will and will only scan with permission because in her world, ethics are as important as intuition. And I couldn't agree with her more on this. And while she can see your energy fields and facilitate healings from anywhere on the planet, she's also a wife, a mom, grandmother, and the kind of friend you want on speed dial when both your soul and your spleen need a check-in. So without further ado, Julie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. That I think is the best opening, best introduction I've ever received. And I've done this hundreds of times. So
Well,
good heavens.
We gotta shake it up here on the Enlighten Up show. We gotta have a little sass, a little humor,
Exactly. It's got to be fun. Mary Poppins taught us everything we need to know in every element that must be done. No, what'd she say? In every task that must be done, there must be an element of fun.
I know.
I agree.
That is something that is becoming my motto for my business, not just my life, but even my business.
Right.
Like if I'm not having fun, I'm doing it wrong.
Exactly.
So we're going to have fun today. And the audience, you guys are going to have a lot of fun. And Julie is going to wow all of you today. And I know before we actually get into so many wonderful details of this podcast, because we know some of you will not listen all the way to the end, Julie has a couple of announcements that she'd like to make, and I want to offer the floor to you, Julie, so that we make sure that people get access to you through the gifts that you're going to offer.
Well, first of all, if you ever think that you're going to be around a loved one who's dying, I would say all of us are at some point, and we're all going to be there one day. My book, Angelic Attendants, What Really Happens as We Transition from This Life into the Next, is about how we're all surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. It even has illustrations in it of how the angels and the spirits are positioned as we're going through the dying process. So if anybody wants a free copy as a gift for joining Nicole and me today, just go to julieryangift.com and we'll send you a free digital and audiobook download. We also have it in Spanish at that link, julieryangift.com. You're welcome to buy the paperback. But Nicole, I give away tens of thousands of these because I think this stuff should be taught in the schools. And I'm sure we'll discuss it in more detail later. Also, as you mentioned, I'm a businesswoman who learned how to do woo-woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. So I teach people all over the world how to do what I do. And my next class, the only in-person class that I do throughout the year, is coming up soon. It's going to be October 24th through the 26th in Atlanta, Georgia. And you'll learn how to communicate with spirit, do energy healings, communicate with pets, past lives, spirit guides, tell how close to death somebody is. And even if you don't want to do this as a business, it'll enhance your life in every area. And it's a blast. The weekend is one of the most fun weekends you'll ever have in your life. And it's so much fun that I have dozens of graduates that come in and volunteer at their own expense just to be a part of it and to help the students. So come join us. That's all at askjulieryan.com. You can learn more about it. But it's meet me in Atlanta, October 24th through the 26th, and enhance your life in every area.
Oh, well, I love that. Look, everyone, your life just got more abundant listening to the first 5 minutes of the show.
Exactly.
So you
Exactly.
got a free
Free
gift
stuff's
there.
good. I'm
Yeah,
free,
we're
but
off to a good start. So,
I'm free, but I'm not cheap. Yeah.
girl, I love that. Okay. So let's kind of dive in. We're not going to waste any time on like, not that it's not interesting because we might get a little into your story, right? But I kind of want to pull up to this psychic buffet and let's
Yeah.
kind of like dive into some mind benders and perspective flips that may have happened for you through the process of
Mhm.
opening up to these gifts more. So, if you could keep only one of your abilities, like scanning bodies, talking to the dead, accessing past lives, like which would you choose and why? And because it would become like 10 times stronger than where it is right now.
That's a tough question because what I've found is that once we connect with spirit, we can do it all. It's all the
Mm.
same thing. So
Hmm.
they're not siloed for me, Nicole. And that cracks me up about the woo-woo space. By the way, woo in Taoism means source. I don't know if you knew that, but when we say woo-woo, that means source.
Oh, I did
So
not know that.
yeah. I have a dear friend who's a Taoist priest, and he told me that. I've been using woo woo for a long time just because I think it's fun. But he goes, well, woo means source. I said, even better. But when we connect with spirit, we can do it all. We have access to universal intelligence. And I don't understand in the woo woo space why you got the psychics and the mediums and the pet psychics and the healers and the past life people. It's all the same thing. So I don't know that I can answer that question as far as skill sets go because it's all the same. It all
Hmm.
comes together.
It's all coming from the same place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just connecting into spirit, and it's spirit working through me and with me, spirit working through us and with us. All of us are
Hmm.
communicating with spirit all day long, whether we're aware of it or not. And and it's spirit working through us and with us to help somebody heal themselves, help a family go through when a loved one is in this phases of dying, help somebody understand where does this fear of heights come from? I've had it since I was a small child. Why? And we see a past life perhaps that is influencing their experience in being afraid of heights in this lifetime.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with you. It's funny, I had a conversation with some women before last weekend, and one was asking like, "What do you do?" and everything, and she's like, "Oh, are you like a medium?" And I said, "No, I don't call myself a medium, but I can talk to some people that have passed. I've definitely gotten messages. I go, but I just don't call myself a medium.
Mhm.
But if the energy allows for it and that's what's being called forward, I can tap into that, right? But I agree with you. Like, I feel like I can access a lot of different gifts. There's certain ones I'm much stronger in.
Mhm.
But I think that's because I'm more intended to use those particular ones based off of what I know my path is unfolding as right now. So who knows? Some of those things may come stronger down the line, you
They
know?
will. They
So,
will. It's been my experience, Nicole, that spirit's going to communicate with us in a way that it's going to be easy for us to receive what it is they're trying to
mhm.
convey. So, for example, I'm a visual learner. I get lots of pictures of things. Oftentimes, it'll be like I'm watching a movie in my head
I'm the
of a
same way.
healing or a past life. Somebody who's an auditory learner will hear things. Somebody perhaps is their primary way of receiving information. Somebody who's a kinesthetic learner will say, oh, they're an empath. They feel things. That'll be their primary way. But then the rest of it all will come in as well.
Hmm. Well, let's kind of touch on something that's a little kind of controversial, a little taboo, but you know, in this world, I think it's so important to be able to open up to your gifts. And of course, it takes time to develop them. I am a big supporter of people um, strengthening their gifts and using them on people to learn and build, especially if you're wanting to start doing it as like your career or your business. But I do believe that some people maybe don't have the strongest ethics, whether it's like maybe they just don't have strong boundaries within themselves and they don't realize that they're doing this. But when it comes to medical intuitiveness,
Mhm.
is it possible for someone to possibly make someone even sicker, or is it always going to be neutral or positive? Would it depend on the intuitive's own personal ethics and boundaries?
I believe that plays a role. That it's, I won't, as you mentioned, I won't scan anybody without their permission because I believe that's an invasion of their privacy.
Hmm.
For example, if somebody has pneumonia and I'm talking with them, they're going to tell me what they want me to know, but I'm not looking at their chest x-ray without their permission. As far as somebody causing harm, doing energy healing, I don't believe it's possible. Here's why. Two main reasons. Number one, when we're doing healings, it's spirit working through us and with us to help that person heal themselves because nobody ever heals anybody else. No doctor, no medical provider, no healer. We all heal ourselves. An example I like to use for that is imagine you get a big cut in your on your leg. You could go to the emergency room and they stitch it up for you. Well, that doctor doesn't make your skin grow back. You make your own skin grow back. And that's how this works. Same with energy healing. So that's number one. We all heal ourselves. The work that I do, the work that a medical provider or a physician does, is helping that person heal themselves. Furthermore, all spirits are pure love. 100% love. That's it. The snarky personalities, the evilness, the whatever stays with the body when somebody dies. It's spirit working through us and with us. Spirit's pure love. They're never going to do anything that's going to be detrimental to somebody. Number one. Number two, we send the healing to that person and their spirit integrates it into the body how it wants to. It's like you give somebody a gift. You can't make them open the gift. You can't make them like the gift. The healing has happened on the energetic level. And then that person's spirit decides how it's integrated or if it even ever is integrated based on what it wants to explore and experience in this lifetime. So, similar to how a physician will take the Hippocratic Oath when they graduate from their medical school to do no harm, it's not possible to do harm from the energetic standpoint.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think it's kind of akin to like a doctor maybe saying to someone, well, you only have 3 months to live. And then like 10 years later, they're still alive.
Yeah.
It's that same kind of experience. It really depends, I think, on the person's own will and personal sovereignty that they're going to own too.
Well, and that's the doctor's opinion, which is why we always say, based on their training and their experience, there's rarely any kind of malicious intent there from a medical practitioner's standpoint. But that's why we're always told if there's something big going on, go get multiple opinions from different doctors because you may get a totally different diagnosis and a different treatment plan. And furthermore, fun story, one of my dear friends is a world-renowned physician who's a several times New York Times bestseller and an expert on women's health. And she told me back in the 1970s when she was in medical school at Dartmouth, her first day in medical school, they talked about voodoo medicine. And she thought, what? What is this? And what they talked about was the power of the mind is really what determines the outcome of a medical condition because the people who died because they had I'm using air quotes, a curse put on them, they believed that the curse had power. It's all the person's belief system. And they
Hmm.
were talking about on her first day of medical school that it's all so much of the healing is part of the belief of the patient. Furthermore, if you look at clinical studies, especially medicines, when they're being tested before they're released, the placebo effect always outperforms the med. Always. It's usually a 52% efficacy rate on the placebo, and it's always better than the medicine itself. Drug companies don't want you to know that,
Yeah.
but when you read the research, it's across the board that the placebo effect. So it's what we're thinking, okay, I'm taking this medicine, it's going to help me heal, even though it's a fake pill.
Hmm.
It's that belief and the power of the mind.
I see. Yeah, and I completely agree with you. Like it is the power of the mind that can completely transform the direction and the trajectory of what's going to be the outcome. So it's very important for people to also understand like their own personal sovereignty. Like so, okay, let's kind of get into this. You obviously have multiple gifts. Which one really started to come online for you first? And what was that like for you?
Well, I learned how to do all of this stuff. As you mentioned in my intro, I didn't have dead people chasing me as a small child, let alone what I would have done with that information had it been happening. So I was really drawn into this from the medical perspective because I was doing things first as a sales rep in the hospital supply industry. And then I started my first company at 25 and invented several surgical devices, as you mentioned. So I was very interested in helping people heal, but through the traditional medical system, helping practitioners, helping surgeons help people heal with devices. And when I heard Carolyn Mace, I read her book, Anatomy of the Spirit. A friend gave that to me more than 30 years ago. And she called herself a medical intuitive. I thought, well, what the heck is that? I'd never heard that term before. And I was interested. And back then, Nicole, we didn't have the internet yet. So I did the old fashioned thing and I went to a bookstore to see what else they had. And I found a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan, who was a former NASA physicist. And she parlayed very complex quantum physics principles into understandable English for the non scientific mind. That would be me. And she was utilizing energy to help people heal. And I was fascinated by that. So I called her school and I asked her if anybody in my area was teaching this stuff. And she said, yeah, as a matter of fact, we have a graduate that just opened a school. And I studied with her for 6 years. And my friends and family were saying, well, why are you doing this? And I'd say, I don't know. And they'd say, what are you going to do with it? I said, I have no clue. It's just really interesting. Fast forward, I now teach people how to do it in a weekend. And oftentimes I'll be asked, well, how can you teach it in a weekend if it took you 6 years to learn it? And I said, well, those concepts are 50 years old. You know, go back to how did we communicate? In the olden days, we used carrier pigeons, then we used horseback riders, then we used the mail. Now we're communicating instantly across technology. So, same thing. I've developed strategies and techniques throughout the past several decades that help people integrate this stuff instantly. So the medical was the thing that attracted me first. And when I was in the training and in my book, the first chapter in Angelic Attendants, I talk about my journey when I first started studying this stuff. And I started seeing different phenomena coming in. Again, I'm a visual learner. So I was seeing colors, and then I was seeing like a grid inside somebody's body. It looked like an architectural drawing with the blue lines.
Hmm.
And then I started seeing body parts, and I started watching healings happening and things like that. The whole time I was learning to communicate with spirit and connect into other people's spirits, my spirit connecting into their spirit. So the thing that drew me in was definitely the medical first. And it's fascinating what I get to see, not only in the medical, but past lives and communicating with deceased loved ones and pets and spirit guides and angels and all of that. It's so much fun.
So it's interesting you say that because I found like I started off as a massage therapist,
Uh-huh.
and during my massage therapy, early in my massage therapy career, I should say, like within the second or third year, also learned to do live cell microscopy. So looking at blood under a dark field microscope. And so I could
Right.
see the blood moving as if it were in the body still because we wouldn't kill the sample. We'd make sure it stays alive. And
Right.
so through like me having to learn the anatomy of the body and all and get very intimate with it and knowing what it feels like, how it responds to touch and how it responds to all these different things and the kind of emotions it stores. And then looking at the blood under a microscope, so really seeing it right down to the cellular level, it has helped me in my intuitive career to like I can now when I'm talking to people, I see things and like I don't know if it's just helped me fine tune getting deeper into the image or the picture, but it speaks to me so clearly and with so much depth that whenever I'm working with someone on their healing journey, I can almost get messages from the body, but I also feel like part of the connection was built through the visual learning of seeing the body, how it responds, how it lives, it breathes, all of that kind of stuff, right down to the cellular level. So for me, I feel like that was part of my learning process. I don't think it has to be for everyone, but like you said, we all have different ways of learning and expanding. So, um, it's just funny how like both like for me getting into where I am now, I started off more in like alternative health. And I guess
Mhm.
what I do is still alternative healing, but it's completely progressed in a much wider place and more expansive place than where it started. So that's just interesting to hear how you saw the grid. So like when you're scanning the body,
Mhm.
and you said at first you saw like these blue grid lines, almost like like this kind of architecture of the body. Is there anything that you've seen in someone's body when you're scanning them that's completely changed the way you think about human health?
Oh, thousands of times. Yes, that everything's healable. Number one, absolutely everything's healable. Now, sometimes the healing is death, and that's when that person's spirit decides that they're done with their human experience. I get to see just miraculous healings multiple times a week. I would say daily when I'm working. And it's fascinating because I'm like a human MRI. I can see broken bones, torn ligaments, viral infections, bacterial infections, cancer, metastasized cancer. Oftentimes before it shows up on the scans on the technology that we currently have. And then I always watch a healing happen. And again, that spirit working through me and with me to help that person heal themselves. And those healings can take the place of something getting added, something getting removed. I watch procedures all the time that emulate what I saw in the operating room for all of those years when I was, first of all, a rep selling hospital supplies and then creating new inventions and testing prototypes with my team and things like that. Sometimes I see healings that utilize methodologies and devices that haven't been invented yet. And I'll say, oh, cool, I haven't seen this before. And then it's just part of my repertoire. And inevitably, I'll have somebody show up with a similar situation that healing will be used on. So the thing that surprised me the most was that just because somebody's been given a diagnosis, it doesn't mean that the body can't heal itself. It just means that based on that person's training and experience within the framework of, let's say, our allopathic medical world, our Western medicine as we know it, they don't believe they can heal. But there are lots of people, to your point earlier, that are up walking around that have been given the diagnosis, okay, get your affairs in order because you're going to be dead in 10 days. And 10
Hmm.
years later, they're up walking around and they're cancer free. So the body has a tremendous capacity to heal itself.
You said something interesting there, so I'd like you to expand on it a little further. That sometimes you've noticed that the healing is actual dying, like the death process. So, can you explain that? Because I've never heard of the death process as the healing path.
Mm-hmm. My mother, we used to laugh. I was born and raised Catholic, 12 years in Catholic schools. And when somebody was in a lot of pain and they were suffering at the end of their lives, we would tease her and we'd say, well, are you going to go light one of those killer candles at church? And she'd go light a candle and say prayers, and inevitably the person would die in the next few days, because she was praying that they would be taken out of their misery. People that
Oh.
had suffered tremendous pain and, whatever. So sometimes that's the healing. They're just done. They've explored and experienced whatever they wanted to in this lifetime. And I was talking with somebody earlier today who lost her brother very suddenly in a motorcycle accident when he was young. I think he was maybe 20 or in his early 20s when he died. And she said, did he know he was going to die? I said, well, his spirit chose that opportunity to check out. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I thought I had silenced that.
Oh, no, you're okay. We couldn't hear it.
Okay, good. Um, and and so I said, well, his spirit knew that he was going to pass, although he was right there in the room because we were talking about him. And he was saying, no, he had no idea. Absolutely not. He didn't know. But that's what his spirit wanted to explore and experience. And it wanted to explore it from that perspective, transitioning in that manner through a motorcycle accident where he died instantly. He was suddenly killed. And it's fascinating how people decide when they're going to go. We all decide where we go, when we go, how we go, and who's with us or not when we go. And the validation for that, and there's tons of it, but an easy way to validate that is ask any critical care practitioner, emergency room, ICU, CCU, somebody who works in hospice, somebody who's a funeral director. They all have just an endless amount of stories about how grandpa waited until his last grandson arrived before he checked out. I had one nurse who told me one time, she said, I was working with a patient and he died. He flatlined. And I said to him, no, you got to come back. You got to wait for your brother. He's going to be here in about 10 minutes. And she said, the monitor went back up. The guy started breathing again. He waited till his brother got there, and then he was dead like 10 minutes after his brother arrived.
Oh my gosh.
And there are endless stories like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we all determine that. And you think about it, if somebody is part of a crime scene and let's say they're shot, well, not everybody dies from a gunshot wound. People decide, their spirits decide, okay, I'm going to use this as my exit point. Or somebody else says, no, I want to experience and explore what it's like to be shot and to recover from that.
So I know that obviously a lot of this life is experience, right? We come down here to experience things, whether good, bad, it's all like what we want to make of it, right?
Correct.
So from your experience of looking into past lives, talking to people who've passed on, watching the body through whether it's healing or choosing the path of dying as healing, do you feel like, say, the moment of death is part of the soul contract in preparation for what might be experienced in the next lifetime?
I get a yes on that. I heard a yes from spirit. I never thought of it that way. I've always thought of it as we come down to explore and experience things. We come in, it's been my experience, Nicole, that we come in with a very generalized script. Let's say you want to be a teacher. Well, there are a bazillion ways you can be a teacher. You can teach in a elementary school, a high school, a college. You can teach in the corporate world. You can teach as a parent. You can teach woo-woo like you and I do. All those different ways that we can teach. So we come in with a basic script and lots of subscripts of things we want to explore and experience. And then our free will helps us choose how we want to experience that. And then I've always thought, well, then we finish this lifetime and then we go back to heaven and we think, oh, that was fun. What do I want to do next? It's like we're actors playing a role in a movie and we can design it any way that we want. I've been told a bazillion times from spirit that we choose where we're born, when we're born, to whom we're born, and the circumstances into which we're born, which set our lives on a trajectory to be able to explore and experience things. For instance, many composers were born into musical families. Marvin Hamlish is one that comes to mind, the Broadway music composer, Chorus Line, many, many other movies and plays. He was a prodigy, and he was born into a musical family who had connections to get him into Juilliard, which taught him all the basics of composing. And then he went on to have an amazing life as a composer and become very famous. So I find that that's the case in everybody's life, whether
Yeah.
we understand that and realize it or not.
Yeah, I've always wondered, like, if how, like, as you said, we choose who we're with or not with, like when we die, and is there some impact of the death? Sometimes it's just a very peaceful, like just checking it, maybe in your sleep, like whatever.
Yeah.
But in other cases, it's not. It can be a little more traumatic, and maybe in those more traumatic moments, is that kind of setting the tone for the next life, or at least an element of the next life? I've never thought about it that way, but when you were speaking, it just kind of popped into my mind of how that might like work, because everything cycles, and this is a cycle.
It's certainly feasible. What I'm hearing from Spirit is it's more about exploring this lifetime
Hmm.
in connection with our past lives. Perhaps we were the parent of, the spouse of, the friend of, the colleague of somebody who was suffering. And this round, we wanted to explore and experience what it was like to be that person who was going through that level of suffering. Now, we look at that from a human perspective and we think, why in the name of God would anybody choose to suffer? And yet, I've been told a bazillion times from spirits that there's no right or wrong, no good or bad in the spirit world. It's just an experience. And so when we're going through something perhaps that we perceive to be even horrific, the spirits are saying, oh, cool. What's she going to create out of this? How's she going to get out of this one? What good's going to come out of this? How is she going to create a different scenario? And we look at that and we think, huh? What? And yet, when we talk to people who've been through something that's been awful for them in their lifetime, most of the time they'll say, yeah, that was horrific. And here's how I benefited from it. Yeah, it was awful. And I wouldn't trade it for anything because here's how my life is now. And it's way better than it was before I went through that experience. So when we go back to the concept that to create something new, the old has to shatter in some way. Think of a seed. We plant a seed in the ground and we water it. Well, what happens? The plant emerges when the seed shatters, and then the plant grows and it bears fruit or vegetables or flowers or whatever. It's been my experience that everything in our lives, in order to create something new, there has to be a shattering of the old. It doesn't have to be dramatic or traumatic, but sometimes it is.
Hmm. And what about like, I understand that this lifetime is about this lifetime, but past lifetimes do bleed into this
Yeah.
lifetime, right? Because
Yeah.
it can be very porous, the energies.
Right. Right.
So are there any patterns or things that you notice with maybe certain organs and past life experiences? Have you seen any kind of patterns arise, or is everything very individualized for people when it comes to maybe the body going through a healing crisis, and also maybe having some past life ties to that?
There's always an emotional component in place before any kind of disease or illness
Hmm.
manifests. And that's the most important part of a healing. I don't have time to do that and explore that on my show when people are calling in from all over the world and I'm doing a scan and a healing on them, or talking to their dead grandmother or their dead pet or whatever. But when I have a client for an hour, I believe that's the most important part of the healing, is to find out what's the emotional component that was in place before that disease or illness manifested. And with addressing the past lives, I will always see a semblance of what I was talking about a minute ago, the script from past lives, a very generalized script that will go through multiple lifetimes so we can explore and experience it from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I use analogies a lot to describe this from an energetic standpoint. And my analogy for past lives is think of Hamlet. How many times has Hamlet been performed since Shakespeare wrote it in 1602? Well, who knows? But you think about it's the same script, but where was it performed? By whom? What language? What was the year? What was happening in the world? Who was the costumer? Who was the designer? Who were the actors? Different perspective of the same script. That's what I see through multiple lifetimes.
Okay.
And when somebody brings in something they want to explore and experience from a past life, and that's identified in the healing work that I do, then we'll correlate it with what's going on in their life. And I'll say, okay, you're playing a role in a movie like A Star is Born. We had Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson do one in the 70s, that script. And then we had Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga do one more recently. Same script, different interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I see it happening in multiple lifetimes.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to ask you something fun.
Okay.
But before I do, so yeah, because I mean, just as recently we had a client at my retreat back in May where he had the thing that was trying to come up that was holding him back from like the future that he was wanting for himself was something that was created in a past life. And we were able to isolate it through like a medicine journey and everything and help him liberate himself from that pain, right? So what I'm going to ask you is what about our healing right now, liberating us for our future self or even future lives, because everything's happening at the same time, right? So, have you ever gone in that direction? I'm going to call it a direction for lack of another word of using it, but like, because that's just kind of flipping the script a little bit, but also our perspective of like, okay, where I'm at right now, healing this is going to open the door to something else in the future or even just this lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And I think that's what the ancestral healing concept is all about as well. That when we heal ourselves from emotional blocks, whether they be benign or whether they be dramatic, that we not only clear it for ourselves, but we also clear it for past generations and future generations of our people. And I find that whole area of study fascinating as
Mm-hmm.
well. So, yes, I believe that it does have an effect. How I perceive it is the body is energy, the spirit is energy, the body's inside the spirit. The spirit's the everlasting part of us. In Catholic school, I was taught that the spirit is somewhere in the chest area, like the upper chest area. That's not what I perceive. What I perceive is that the spirit's the main part of us and the body's inside. And if you look at the old masters' paintings of religious figures, perhaps saints or a religious figure, they're oftentimes depicted with a halo around their head or around their whole body.
Mm-hmm.
It's their aura, it's their spirit, it's their
Yeah.
energy field. It's all the same thing. So those two types of energy are contained in what I call the energy field membrane. And it reminds me of a really big, thin, stretchy plastic bag, kind of like the thickness of saran wrap on a tray of chicken breasts you get from the grocery store. And when there's a tear or a hole in that energy field membrane, the person's leaking power before any kind of disease or illness sets in. And it's caused by an energy block, which in turn is caused by an emotional event. So we'll go into that tear or hole and I'll be shown a scene. And if it's past life, I'll get where it was, when it was, a little bit about what happened. We'll correlate it with their current life. If it's something from this lifetime, I'll get information about it. Here's the year. Here's what I'm seeing. Does this make sense to you? And I would say 99.9% of the time when I say to a client, okay, it was 1967, and they'll say, yeah, my parents got divorced. I was 8.
Mm-hmm.
They know instantly. As soon as we illuminate that emotional event that caused the energy block. I'm not looking for the most dramatic or traumatic thing that's happened to them. I'm looking for, where did that energy block begin in this lifetime? Did you bring it in from a past life? Is it something that occurred in this life? It's been my experience, Nicole, that that energy block immediately eradicates, the energy field membrane heals. The body goes back to working on full power, helps the
Mm-hmm.
body regain and maintain health.
Mm-hmm.
An analogy I use for this is, imagine going to a pet store and buying a goldfish. They're going to put it in a plastic bag of water in order for you to get it home. Well, if you have a picture of that in your mind's eye, the fish represents our body, the water represents our spirit, because again, the body's inside the spirit, and the plastic bag represents the energy filled membrane. If there's a pinhole in that plastic bag and water's draining out a drop at a time, for a long time, that fish is going to be fine. However, when enough water drains out, the fish is going to be in trouble. And that's what happens to the human body. And I equate it to how psychologists say, now, Nicole, we're going to talk about your life, and it'll be like peeling an onion a layer at a time. I just want to get the onion out by the root, because it removes all the other blocks that have piled on top of that initial energy block and caused the blowout
Yeah.
in the membrane.
I agree with you. That's kind of how I've been formulating my work as well. You know, of course, I think we all start by peeling back the layer of the onions, of course, like that's where you usually have to start. But what
Right.
I've recognized too is that what I'm looking for is the one distortion in your field that is running all of like the main problems, that once you collapse that distortion, everything else just starts to naturally heal itself, right? Like,
Right.
so you don't have to focus on this thing and that thing and every other thing. Like, let's just focus on the one. I call it the biggest distortion, okay,
Right.
in your field.
Right.
And once you start to heal that, like things just magically are changing. Like, for instance, just before we jumped on this podcast, I was talking to a client I'm working with, and after just one session with her, we were able to isolate like what the core distortion was, and through doing like invocations that my I have created an AI to kind of like use my brain and frameworks and stuff like that to help clients 24/7. So the AI created this invocation for her, and through doing the invocation, not only did she purge so many ancestral beliefs like that were imprinted on her through religion and parental and grandparents and all this kind of stuff down the ancestral lineage, but once she got through that, not like there was other elements, but the big thing that was so cool was that there was this surge and emergence of this creative desire and need to paint. And she couldn't understand like where it was coming from, because she's never wanted to paint in her entire life. And so we, through like, I don't want to get too much of her details, but basically it tied into the painting was setting her free from all of
Mhm.
the blocks and distortions that were keeping her body sick and immovable.
Right.
And so she's like, I've never felt more empowered. I've never felt so proud of like the work I'm doing. And it's like, and so joyful, which were
Yeah.
all the three things that were missing from her healing
Right.
journey. And so now her healing turned into a process of joy. And we just started. We're not even like, we've
Yeah.
just cracked the surface, so to speak. So for me, it's like when you find that one distortion, or like you say, the root of where it all began, right? That is so powerful. I wish people understood, like, you don't have to do all of the work. You just need to do the right work.
Well, and you don't need to rehash every drama and trauma that you've been
No.
through and re traumatize yourself as you do this. Certainly, there's a place for psychotherapy always, but the model of, let's spend 10 years in therapy and relive all of the horrible things that have happened to you in your lifetime, it's not necessary
Mm-mm.
to do it, I've found. And it sounds like we're doing the same thing. And the other thing that I find is that once that core, and it looks like a little kernel of unpopped popcorn to me.
Okay.
Once it's identified, that energy filled membrane immediately heals, body's working on full power. I've never seen the energy filled membrane rupture again. And I've done this tens of thousands of times over the years. I've never seen it rupture in someone. I'm not saying it can't, but I think it's highly unlikely since I haven't seen it, number one. And number two, I'll usually say, okay, tell your husband to wear sunglasses tonight because you're going to be brilliant in the dark. And they laugh. But I see their energy field just boom. It just instantly lights up. It goes from like a 10-watt light bulb to a 5,000-watt light bulb instantly once that membrane is healed. So we're
Hmm.
doing the same thing in clearing all of that drama and trauma in one fell swoop. And certainly we'll have other experiences in our lives that will add more energy to that. But chances are of it accumulating as much power as the lifetime and lifetimes previously before we clear it, I think it's highly unlikely that
Yeah.
that's going to happen in this lifetime.
So, have you ever worked with someone really close to death?
Oh, all the time.
Okay,
Yeah.
so have you ever have they ever shared with you when they're kind of like more from the other side of the veil? So they haven't necessarily passed on, right?
Mhm.
But like that transition period can be very porous and very like there's not a lot of boundary there. So
Right.
has anyone ever told you something really super surprising while they're still alive, but from the other side of the veil, they're communicating something to you that's maybe like shocked you or surprised you in any way?
Oh, many times. Yes. When somebody's dying and we go through what I call the 12 phases of transition, which is how their spirit is exiting their body, it looks like a cartoon speech bubble where the cartoon characters' words or thoughts are, and then the spirits and angels and pet spirits are in the room. There are three questions I always ask everybody. Are you ready to go? It's usually yes or no. Are you in pain? Yes or no. If they're in pain, will let their family know so that they can have them not be in pain. And lastly, what do you need? And that runs the gamut. It's from, can you bring me chocolate cake with, ice cream on it? I need my sweater. Can you bring me a magazine? To one of my favorites is I was working with a family in Athens, Greece. And I, like you, we can scan somebody anywhere in the world. We could scan somebody in a galaxy far, far away if we needed to, because it's just energy. So I was working with a family in Athens, Greece, and their father was dying and he was not able to communicate for the last 6 months of his life. And he was basically in a coma as he was getting near the end of his life. And when I asked him, what do you need? He said, I need to say goodbye to my sister. So I was on the phone with his wife and I said, can you have his sister come over? He wants to say goodbye to her. And she said, well, that's kind of hard because she lives in Australia. And I said, well, get her on Zoom or on FaceTime or something and hold the phone up or hold the computer up so he can hear her voice and all of that. And he did. She did, the wife did, and he died the next day. So
Mm.
it runs the gamut of what they need. Sometimes like, there's a story in Angelic Attendance about a woman who was in the intensive care unit, and I met her daughter in the waiting room. My father was in a different pod in the ICU in the same hospital, and they had taken her off the ventilator, and they thought she'd die within a matter of minutes, and she had lasted quite a few days, and they were all just kind of waiting for her to go. They were in from all over the country. And so I was telling her daughter, the one that I met in the waiting room, a little bit about what I did. She, will you come in and, see what you can figure out? And I did. And her family members were camped all around the room, some were on the floor and some were sitting in chairs. And I asked her, I said, what do you need? And she said, I need for them all to be with me when I pass. And so I said to her daughter who'd brought me in the room, I said, well, are there more people here? And she said, oh, yeah, they're spread all over the hospital. They're asleep on couches in the lobby. They're in the cafeteria. They're all over. And I said, well, bring them in and have everybody in here. And she said, do I need to bring the people who are home, who are at her home, who are asleep? And I asked the woman's spirit. She said, no, no, just the ones that were here. So the daughter got them all in the room. And then about 20 minutes later, she was walking by my father's room. And this is the middle of the night. This is like 2 in the morning or something. And she said, how can I ever thank you? We brought everybody in the room. And within about 5 minutes, she took her last breath. She wanted everybody together.
Mm.
So that's just really a touching story of the ability that we have to communicate telepathically with our loved ones, even as they're dying, to find out what do they need to help them
Mhm.
pass.
Yeah. So you're kind of like a death doula as well, in a way, you know?
Well, yeah, sort of that
Mhm.
we can communicate. But I teach people too, both people that call into my show and also my students, that if you go to askjulieryan.com and you go to the 12 phases of transition page, there is a chart there of all of the different phases, and it's in a diagram. I say, if you have somebody at the end of your life, download that chart, save it on your phone with the photographs. And then when you have a loved one who's dying, just ask in your head or aloud, what phase is my dad in? What phase is whomever in? And you'll hear a number in your head fast as you can snap your fingers. And then you refer to the chart and
Okay,
it'll
that's
give you a
helpful.
visual
Yeah.
of what's going on. And if you see that your loved one is going through phase 6, 7, 8 in rapid succession, like over a matter of a couple of days, start bringing the family in. Anybody that wants to come say goodbye before that person passes, allow them that opportunity. Because in this day and age, people live far apart. Sometimes they're traveling vast distances to be with a loved one at the end of their lives. And certainly people are taking time off work and getting childcare
Yeah.
and whatever. And it really adds a glorious component to a heart-wrenching situation.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So for everyone who just heard that, make sure you go over to our website, especially if you're going through this process right now. That could be very helpful to you. So if there's one piece of advice that those who've passed on could give us about life and living life, what would it be from your perspective?
Lighten up, have fun. We just overcomplicate and just take things way too
Way too
seriously.
serious.
And,
Yeah.
and I think we see that with the elderly. When you
Hmm.
really sit down and talk to somebody, I heard a woman, I think it was an Instagram reel actually, and I heard a woman who was 107 say, I listen to what people say and then I just go do what I want to do. And my life's really joyful. And the wisdom that comes with age and experience, I mean, I could be your mother and I can tell you that I'm way more joyful now in my mid 60s than I was when I was in my 20s because I was worried about everything. And
Yeah.
now it's just kind of like, okay, whatever. I know the people I need are going to show up right when I need them. I know the situations are always going to end up benefiting me in some way. And the other big thing is that our thoughts create our reality. So when thoughts come into our heads, they don't have a meaning until we give them a meaning.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
thoughts have energy. So what we think, we create. And when we stay on the same loop of, there are no good men in my town, and I need to move to find a partner because, all men are this or all women are that, or that's a belief. And that's what you're sending out, and that's what you attract more of. I
Yeah.
was I was laughing. I was telling my husband last night, I heard Michael McDonald's What a Fool Believes, the song.
Oh
It was,
no, I don't know that.
oh, oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a great song. And it's what a fool believes he sees, and nobody has the power to change his mind, basically, is what the lyrics are.
Very true.
And I find that spirit communicates to us in a multitude of ways, including in lyrics, in movies, in TV shows, in road signs, in license plates, in things that we read in a book. And when something resonates and you go, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way, that's spirit communicating with us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so wild. Like the this whole idea of living your life so concerned about what others believe you should be doing, think you should be doing, want you to do. It's truly like and I'm seeing this across the board in a lot of like my clients too, like because a lot of people get hung up on like what's my purpose, what am I supposed to be doing, I'm currently doing this but I really want to do that, or getting all these blocks and I know I'm supposed to do this, why am I experiencing so many challenges, so many obstacles and all this kind of stuff. And I really feel, and I can speak to this in my own journey as well, is that a lot of it stems from not owning your own desire to pursue it, to want to do it and have fun with it. Like
Right.
just if it lights you up, if it's your joy, follow it. Like just do it. And it's like when you decided to go and do this training so many decades ago, like just because you wanted to, you had no idea what you were going to do with it. And I think people just want the roadmap right away. And it's like, you don't
Yeah.
get the roadmap. The roadmap
Right.
comes in chunks, and you get another piece after you make a step forward that goes into a place that you don't really know yet. Right. Like, one of the things that I've really realized, and actually, this would be something I'd be curious to know if you can do any reading into or not, but my own path has evolved so much over the years. Like I started doing this when I was in my early 20s. I'm now in my late 40s. And so it's really evolved over a 25 plus year period. And I am now finding that I'm really wanting to work with technology and AI, which is really like in a strange way, our first instinct is, well, that's so like out of the box, like from being an intuitive and a healer. Like, why would you want to like go into more of the tech space and the AI stuff? But I have this like natural inclination, like I just feel drawn to it. And when I started creating my AI earlier this year, one of the things that I'm only starting to realize really like in these last week or so is because my current AI has been flagged by OpenAI because they think it's too medical or whatever, which is not doing anything. It's not giving medical advice, but because of the different big companies that are running all the things, it has to be very careful. So just the word healing has flagged my AI, right? So I've had to look at a new company to help me create it and then also make sure that we put in all of the stipulations to prevent it from ever getting flagged again to the best of our abilities. And
Hmm.
so I finally found a company that is going to help me build it out and so that I can have it behind my website, all of that kind of stuff. So it's all like for me. And when he looked at my program that I had created for the AI, this is the guy who's running all the software behind the company, is creating tons of different GPTs for people and AIs to put on their websites and all this kind of stuff. He was quite impressed with the programming. He's like, you've done a very good job with your GPT already. And I started to think, like, this isn't the first time someone in the tech space has said this to me after looking at it. And so I kind of like, I sit with it and I go back to the moment when I was creating it and I was in total joy,
Right.
like absolute joy. I was just having fun with it. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I just knew I wanted to create it. And I'm like, well, let's just have fun. And literally, like, I think from that space, I was able to channel in instructions that I wasn't maybe fully conscious of, like where it was coming from or what, on how to program it, because I'm not someone who's tech savvy. I mean, I can learn and handle some things. So just from firstly allowing myself to come from it from a place of let's just play, have a good time, and not worry about where this is going, which I think was very important to opening the channel of creation for it. But I'm wondering, because you can kind of look into past lives and things of that nature, do you see anything in my field that ties me back to some sort of technology or work with technology in past lives? 'Cause I know that many lives stack on top of each other to prepare you for other ones, and where you can bring in those gifts that get activated at different times in your life and all that kind of stuff. I'm just curious because this is like something I never saw for myself for my
Right.
up until literally it started happening.
Right. Well, I think you bring up a really good point, and that is that's how you know you're being led, is when you're interested, it's fun, you want to know more. I have a communications degree and I'm an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world. How's that work? Who
Yeah.
knows? Certainly, all of this is channeled. Every author, every composer, every screenwriter, every actor. I have a graduate of my class who's a Broadway star who used to, in one of her starring roles, was channeling Loretta Lynn or somebody. some country music singer for 20 minutes during the performance. And she said every night she'd go there and she'd be like, oh, please, God, help me not make a fool of myself. And she said she'd be out there interacting with the audience and she'd go back up on stage and she really had very little idea of what had happened, but they were applauding. So she knew that it was probably good. So I think it's important to note that we all channel, and you following where you're being led, you're being led because it's fun and it's interesting and you want to know more. That's how we know. When we're going through a slog and we're thinking, oh my God, I'm running up to all these obstacles and all these blocks and all this other stuff. It's supposed to be downstream. We're not supposed to swim upstream. That's spirit saying, hey, go back and reevaluate this. Try it from a different angle. Reevaluate whether or not you even want to do this. That's number one. As far as from a past life, do you have a technology background? What I saw when you asked in my mind's eye was you were this little Asian man, Chinese, I'm assuming, because you were working on an abacus. And you were using the beads, which just is fascinating. How in the heck can they count on that stuff? And the people back then that were really good at it, they would do it in lightning speed. So I think it goes back many millennia, perhaps, that you have had a mathematical component to your brain, and you're utilizing those skill sets that you've developed throughout your life to bring you to this point. When I do my work, this is the first time in 9 companies that I don't have a business plan. I don't have measurables. I don't have goals. People will say, well, what are your goals? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have any. And they say, well, what do you mean you don't have any? I say, I just don't. I'm led. And then I explore it. And if it's interesting to me, then I go forward with it. If I'm not interested, then I don't. And that's what's happening with you. I think we overcomplicate the crap out of everything, and we don't need to. And just because you don't have a background, I'm not an engineer, but I know how to hire good engineers that can draw up, the things that I've had patented in my name. I don't need to know how to do that. I can find the people that know how to do that. I was never a medical provider, but I can buy an anatomy book and somebody talks to me about their spleen. Well, I have no idea where the spleen was, but I can look at a drawing of, somebody's body and where the organs are, and I can learn where a spleen is. And we're led to all of that as we expand. And that's why we're here to create. That's the whole human experience. You can create something that's fun and interesting and moves humanity forward, or you can create something that just is just obnoxious and awful, and you decide to live in that. George Lucas said that we all live in cages with the door open. I agree.
Yes.
And sometimes it takes golden ovary courage or brass ball courage to say, okay, yeah, I'm being led to do this. This is interesting. People may think I'm a fool, but what the hell? I'm going to just go try it. The way that angelic attendance came about, may I share that story?
Yes, please.
Correlates with what we're discussing right now. When my mother was dying in 2002, that was the first time I'd ever been around somebody who was dying. And I'd been studying woo-woo for a few years at that point, and I was seeing all these angels and deceased loved one spirits and dog spirits that we had when I was a kid, pictures that I'd seen of my mother's pets. Their spirits were in the room too. And so I felt like the Lady of Justice. On one side, my heart was breaking on that one scale, and on the other side, I was seeing all these glorious things unfold. So one day I was with my mentor laying on the table, and she was doing a healing with me. And my deceased loved one's spirits come in and line the sides of the table, and they participate in the healing. Well, one day, Nicole, this dead Pope spirit shows up, and he's got his hat on and his shepherd's rod and his, Pope outfit. And I said, well, who are you? And my mentor could see him too. And he said, I'm Clement. And I said, okay, sorry, I never heard of you. And he laughed and he said, well, I was number 6. I said, great. How may I help you? And he said, you're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies, because it's been so bastardized over the millennia. and people are so afraid. And it's just crazy. And you've seen it many times because by that point, my mom had been gone about 3 years and I worked with other family members and friends, relatives. And he said, you know what's happening. So you just need to go teach the world. And I said, thank you so much for stopping by. I'm really not interested because I'm a businesswoman and people are going to think I'm nuts if I do that. And he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But everything you've done in your life has led you to be able to do this on a global scale. So you just need to get on with it. And again, I said, thank you so much for stopping by. Have a nice day, kind of a thing. Well, Nicole, I go in the car to go home, and I just did a search on my phone about Pope Clement VI. Turns out this guy was in office during the Black Plague when 2/3 of Europe died, and he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And I thought, good heavens, Ryan, you can't make that up. I had always been interested in woo-woo from the medical side. So now here's this dead Pope spirit showing up saying, you got to teach people what happens when somebody's dying. So I just let it go for a few years. And I sold my medical device manufacturing company in 2015. And about that time, I was at church and I was sitting between my husband and my son. And from the pulpit, the priest said, wouldn't it be interesting to find out if our angels and our loved ones really greet us and lead us into paradise? And I'm getting elbowed from both sides, from my husband and my son. And I'm thinking, God, seriously, from the pulpit in the middle of church, you're giving me grief about this? And so that's when I wrote the book. And that's really what started all of this. It was not a direction I ever envisioned. And now it's led to, multiple YouTube channels and 4 shows we release on the podcast and classes and clients and all that kind of stuff. But never in a million years, if you would have told me that I would be doing this work even 10 years ago, I would have said, no way. And even within the work, being led in different directions, like you're being led with this AI, you're following where you're being led. And that's when the magic really happens. When we go with, okay, this is obviously something that my spirit wants to explore and experience, and I just need to get over myself with the fear and engage. And then we're led to the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. To your point earlier, we don't have a roadmap of, okay, you stop here, and then there, and then there, and then there. And think how boring our lives would be if we did. It's all about the experience.
Yeah. No, and I think like if you had the full roadmap, this is what I always say, it means someone else did it. It's someone else's
good
map.
point.
It's not yours.
Yeah.
Your map gets developed along your own journey.
Right.
So don't worry if you don't have a map. It means you're following your own journey, your own map.
Well, and we're all hardwired for fear. And we believe, I think, it's false. We have a false belief that if we have a roadmap that we're going to be safer to explore whatever it is. And really, you think about going on a roller coaster for the first time and you're scared and you're going up the hill and you're like, oh my God. And then, you're going on the roller coaster where you get off and you get back on to do it. It's never as good as the first time because you know what to expect.
Yeah.
The fun is exploring it.
Yeah. And also to that note, whenever you're constructing a map, you're constructing it from the advantage point that you only have in that moment. But if you just go forward another month, 2 months, whatever, even if it's 3 years, your vantage point now is drastically different, more knowledgeable, which means your map would include more than it did at the beginning, right? So you have to understand that that map is constantly evolving. It is not just a static, piece of paper, so to speak, or diagram or whatever you want to call it. It's constantly in motion. It's animated and it changes as you make certain decisions or choices or avoid something or decide not to do something. And I think that, that's the beauty of you not having the map is because as you keep moving forward, that map is going to evolve. So if you in your head thought, oh, well, I know I'm supposed to do this thing 5 years down the road, and then 5 years down the road, you get there and there's another opportunity that you couldn't possibly see 5 years later, but you totally miss it because you're so certain that you're supposed to take that exit, whatever on that map to take you on a different path, and totally miss the like, the little opportunity on the side. Like that's the way I kind of see it. And so you can't be afraid of stepping into the unknown, even though so many of us are. It's just like, know that you're not stepping into the void completely. You're just taking one or two steps forward. You can always step back if you need to, but I think this is something that people don't really realize is how important this is to the unfolding of your destiny and your path is the movement part. Like you just have to take
Take
a little
action.
step or two forward for the
Mhm.
next piece to be presented to you.
Plus, your life can unfold in unimaginable
Oh yeah.
ways because our imaginations are limited to our frame of reference at that time when we're envisioning something. And nobody's life unfolds, no business. Every business plan, nobody follows them. Even the big companies, that's all for the bankers. They put out these business plans that they pull out of the air and nobody follows them because stuff happens. We
Yeah.
get global pandemics and we get a stock market dip and we get, there are a multitude of different variables that can come in to affect an outcome. And so that's why I always tell people too, when they want to know, okay, what's going to happen in the future, I'll say, here's what I'm getting at this moment in time, with the caveat that future events are fluid. There are a bazillion variables that are going to come in to affect an outcome. So here's what is happening right now. Here's what I'm getting. It could be different this afternoon, next week, next month, next year. And again, that goes back to the adventure. And I agree with you that it's just a matter of getting over the fear to take that step. And when we are thinking super far out in the future, of course, we don't know what all of the variables are that are going to affect that outcome. So we get paralyzed in fear.
Hmm.
Whereas if you just take one step, then the next step's going to be shown, and the next step, and the next step. There was a book out called The Secret about 20 or 25 years ago about doing different affirmations and, okay, I'm going to meet the love of my life and I'm going to have this amazing life and blah 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 blah, but nobody's taking any action. They're waiting for Prince Charming to show up at their front door and ring their doorbell. Well, you got to take action
Hmm.
with all of it. And that was the missing link. People say, well, I do affirmations every day and nothing's happening. I'm going, okay, so what action are you taking to create
Yes,
whatever it is you want? You
I
got to take
know.
action.
And listen, I know there are people out there who are like, and I'm gonna use this as one example. There's a million examples that we could use, but this one's just super easy because I think a lot of people can relate to it. I'm just gonna manifest my perfect partner and they're gonna show up on my door and I'm not gonna have to go out and do the dating thing. I'm not gonna have to go and push myself into social situations that I'm really super uncomfortable with because I've been on my healing journey. I've been isolating myself. And so I don't know how to really interact with the whole social scene right now, but I'm just gonna keep manifesting because I can't be bothered with that and I can't be bothered with this. And it's like, no, you're totally cutting off all life force of what you're here to experience. The whole point of manifestation is not to just pull things towards you, but it's supposed to go through the process of experiencing life so that you can create it through the experience. And it's like, I just wish people understood, like, you're literally like severing one of the most beautiful parts of life that you came in here to have by
Yeah.
thinking like you're just gonna like divinely like bring it forward, through any of the actual experience of living it.
Well, and I've heard that from a million spirits over the years where they want to have the human incarnation because they can create over time. What I've been told is that in the spirit world, they think of something, it immediately appears.
Hmm.
Whereas things are created here in our existence over time. And we think of something and we try it, and then that leads to something else, and they see that as fun. Again, there's no right or wrong, no good or bad in the spirit world. So we can create something that's wonderful, or we can create something that's really awful. It's still a creative process.
Yeah. And it's also like, it's not to say that, because of course I know you've likely had it. I know many people in my audience have had this experience where like you literally think of something, you've manifested it within like sometimes minutes, hours, days, whatever it might be. And then there's things that are just so impossible to manifest. It's like there's certain things you can like clockwork, and then there's other things that you're struggling with. And I think part of the reason, and I think it's not just one thing, but I think part of the reason is because there's something you're avoiding through the experience of living through that manifest. Like the manifestation needs to be lived through certain experiences, if that makes sense. And so I think that's important, like to kind of keep in mind, because obviously there's definitely the ability to quantum manifest at will at any point. That is absolutely possible. I've done it. I know a lot of my audience has done it. And so, but it's also important to realize that sometimes we get so safe and comfortable in the world of just energy and being isolated and just doing what we know because it's comfortable, that we forget that we're not allowing ourselves to grow and evolve in the discomfort of maybe going out into the life and doing some of the things.
Well, and to piggyback on that as well, there are a bunch of other variables that need to get into place oftentimes. My son was wanting a different job and he was working on it and working on it. And I kept saying, there's a job being created for you. It just hasn't happened yet. And this went on for 2 years. And guess what? A job was created for him at the end of that 2 year period, and they came and they got him. And it's far exceeded his best expectations. All the jobs that he applied for that he didn't get. And he had a great job to begin with. He just wanted to go into a different phase of the industry. And I kept saying, honey, I promise you it's coming. It's being created. It's just not there yet. Well, it was created. He was up against 6 other people that were way more experienced, way older. I think the youngest one closest to his age was 15 years older than him, and he
Oh,
got the job.
hmm.
So again, I think that's a great example of how there are so many different pieces of the puzzle that are being created for us. And when we stay on the path of, okay, I'm being led to do this, I'm being led to do that, I'm gonna take action on this, I'm gonna take action on that as things are being created. And then that's what gives us the unimaginable
Hmm.
experience, because his frame of reference was based on what the available jobs in the industry were. Well, this was a new job that had been created at a totally new
Yes.
a new opportunity, a new division of a company that hadn't existed before.
That makes total sense.
Mhm.
And I think that's also like, well, I mean, timing is definitely part of the equation. As
Right.
much as some of like us A-type personalities who want it now, hate to believe, but timing does play a role and it's important. And I think that's something there. I think sometimes the important thing is understand if you're being led, follow that. But
Right.
don't get hung up on not taking any action anywhere, because then it feels like you almost truncate the energy, that's almost helping to pull it in,
Right.
sometimes like for me, again, I'm realizing that joy and play are very important frequencies for me to create and pull in the things that I want to manifest.
Mhm.
And even though I had no idea what I was manifesting, I was in the right frequency. So
Right.
it was able to find me. So, like, this is like also important.
Well, and that's like inventions. I mean, I knew what a problem was that was identified to me by people that worked in surgery. And then I started thinking, okay, well, how can we solve this problem? And that's when I pulled in the information I know now from spirit. Again, I hadn't learned woo woo yet, but I know now that I was pulling in the information that could develop into a product that would solve that problem. And
Hmm.
then the people that I needed to show up showed up. I brought in engineers. I brought in people who had manufacturing capabilities. I didn't know those areas, but I knew how to read and I knew how to bring in people that were experts in those areas. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck too. Like you with AI, you could have just been stalled and say, well, what the heck do I know about AI? Nothing. But you weren't, but you knew that you were being led to develop something and you were trusting that those people that had the skill sets that were going to be necessary to create that were going to show up. And
Hmm.
it's always remarkable how they do show up. The
Yeah.
stories are just that's part of the fun
I know. Well,
of it.
even just you saying that, it's triggering a memory where one of my girlfriends who's super intuitive, she read me a couple of years ago and she told me, she goes, you're gonna like make some kind of device or something. She goes, I don't know, it's gonna help people with their healing. And I'm like, what? Like me? Like I don't even know what you're talking about. I think what she was talking about might have been this like AI, right? And then I remember around the same time, I also had a dream and it was very prominent. It's one of those ones that really stick out to you. And in the dream, I was talking to another intuitive person who was who was there, or no, was I don't know. They were there, but basically, I was being told it's time for you to remember the your work with physics and quantum physics to bring forth new inventions or something along that nature. And I remember waking up from that dream going, what the hell was that about? Like, I don't even know
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to do with that information, right? And sometimes you get the information well ahead of time, like you did for
Yeah.
your son, and eventually like it all comes together. But I didn't really think too much of it. I'm like, well, okay, if it's meant to be, it's gonna happen, like, and I'll just let it be. But I had no idea what that meant. And I was like, I don't know how to work with numbers or anything like of that nature to the think of what I thought it was. But I think what I thought it was based off where I was back in time was no
Mhm.
way able to conceive today. So
Right.
it's like you just don't know. But yeah, this information come in. So
I
I
was telling my son this story yesterday, and I don't know why it came up, but I'm being led to share it with you if I may.
yeah.
20 years ago, maybe, yeah, probably 20 years ago, I belonged for many years to a CEO group that's international, and we would meet once a month. And of course, I was the only girl, it was all guys. A lot of them were a lot older than I was. And we would have speakers that would come in each month to our get-togethers, and it was all day long. So one time this guy came in and he was an intellectual property attorney, and I had several patents and several trademarks at that point for my different devices. And he was telling us that it's really important if you want a trademark to check periodically because sometimes they're not renewed and you can pick them up. And so I went home that day and I looked up this one trademark that we were wanting that wasn't available for 10 years prior. And the thing had expired because they hadn't renewed it. So we jumped on that. I had my IP, my intellectual property attorney, jump on it right away. We filed the trademark stuff on it. Well, come to find out, Nicole, the lawyer who was from Minneapolis, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, who was giving us this workshop and this talk in Birmingham was the attorney, the IP attorney who originally filed this trademark 15 years prior. And he was the one telling me in this presentation to look to see if it was available. Now, you can't make
What?
that up. Yeah,
No.
yeah, it was amazing. And just last week, a trademark that I wanted to do, I have many trademarks now for Ask Julie Ryan and that whole business. And just a trademark came available last week that we've been wanting to get. And I got an email from my IP attorney and she said, hey, that trademark's available. Do you want to swoop in and get it? I said, yeah. So point being, the people we need to show up when we need them. The situations that we need to help us manifest whatever it is we're being led to do show
Hmm.
up. It's
Hmm.
happened so many times in my life. I don't even question it. I expect it. I have one other fun story. May I share it
Yeah.
about that? I was flying to Los Angeles, where I used to live for a long time. And it was on Mother's Day, and I was going to be out there for 48 hours on business. And my doctor was there. And she was coming in on Mother's Day to see me in her office. And my plane was delayed about an hour. And my intention when I got there was I was going to stop by a store and buy her some flowers as a thank you for coming in. So I land, and about 5 minutes before we landed, I thought, well, I'm late. I got to pick up the car. I got to get to her office, blah, blah, blah. Maybe one of the gift shops inside the airport will have flowers since it's Mother's Day. So we land at LAX. I'm off the plane. I promise you, within 5 minutes, I'm walking out of LAX. I'm still in the terminal. And I passed this woman with this huge bouquet of flowers. And I said, "Oh, your flowers are beautiful. Happy Mother's Day." And she said, "No, here, take them." I said, "No, no, 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 no. No, somebody wanted you to have them." And she said, "Look, I'm flying to New York. They're going to be a wreck by the time I get there. Please take them and enjoy them." So within 5 minutes of me getting off that plane with that thought of maybe I'll find some flowers in the airport, not only did I find flowers that were even better than what I'd envisioned, they were free. And I took them to my doctor and gave them to her, and she was thrilled.
Who
So
doesn't love an upgrade and then an upgrade
ex-
that was free?
exactly. So that's, I think, such a great story and such a great example of our thoughts create our reality, whether
Yes.
it's instantaneous or whether it takes time.
And here's the thing too. I'm wanting to say this as well. Like, I don't know. It's funny. Like you say something and it's like, oh, I feel like I need to share this. And this is more for the audience to really understand that, because I know earlier you mentioned, like it should feel good. Like what you're following should feel ease and all of that. That doesn't mean you won't have obstacles or challenges ahead of you.
Right.
A lot of those things are there to strengthen you, to grow, to expand. So, for instance, with my AI, it came together like melted butter on a hot knife. Okay. Like it was just so easy. And the way everything was coming together, everything was just like my clients were loving, everything was just beautiful. And then boom, I get hit with this red flag, and I was able to avoid it for a month, but I couldn't update her. I was really wanting to update her with some things. And by accident, by total accident, while I was trying to like clone her and do something, seeing if I could like maybe create a new copy of her so that I could upgrade her, somehow like it wouldn't, it did it. And then I don't know what happened, but I ended up having to go back. And so I was like, oh, let me just delete it, or let me just take it offline. No, I didn't delete it. I took it off public use. Well, I didn't realize I was doing it to my actual one that people were using. And so as soon as I did that, it flagged it and says, well, if you want it to be public, you have to appeal it now. And at first I was like, how could I do something so stupid? It's such a Mercury retrograde kind of move. And, I was getting really angry with myself because I knew that if I had ever done the appeal, it would prevent other people from using it. But I believe now, based off of like just a few days later, because then that's forced me, well, I got to come up with a solution. I need to get this back up and running. And so I met this man that I told you, this company out in Europe who's helping me. Well, lo and behold, after like we sign on and everything, um, he had told me that his wife, he just got recently married and his wife's a homeopathic doctor.
Oh,
And so he's like, I'm very interested in what you do, and it's really close to my heart. I think what you're doing is really great. And I know the issues that you're facing by the trillion-dollar companies of big pharma and all that kind of stuff, that are having a stranglehold over OpenAI and causing all of these like things to be like that are putting pressure on that company. Um, so I was like, oh, well, that's really cool. And he's like, yeah. And so I really want to help you navigate that thing. And I'm like, what are the chances that
right.
I would find an AI company whose owner like thought what I was doing was like super important in this world, and it was one of his most passionate things that he like loves to help out, and his wife is doing similar work in the field. Like she's a homeopathic doctor. So I was like, this is how I know. I was totally meant to move her from a different platform to a new platform, and that it was time, even though it wasn't on what I would
Mhm.
prefer the timing. But
Right.
it forced me to find a solution that's likely going to make her even better now and also protect me and her so that other people can use her properly and get better use out of her and all that. So you just never know. Like sometimes these catastrophes or like these, issues that seem like it's like, oh no, what have I done? Or what has happened? Like, why is this happening to me?
Mhm.
Actually is the entry point to an upgrade, but it comes through like an obstacle or challenge.
Right. And it's being able to discern between what's a real fear and what's a fake fear. A real fear is something that's going to harm you or kill you. A fake fear is everything else. And that's 99.9% of the thoughts that we think that feel badly. Because if we have a thought that feels bad, it's always based in fear, anger,
Hmm.
jealousy, boredom, actual grief, actual fear. It's all based in fear. And we're all hardwired for fight or flight. Body doesn't know the difference. So we want to be able to discern between the two different types of fear. I have a technique that I've developed that helps us do that. May I share that?
Yeah, please do.
I call it the 2-minute rule. And here's how it goes. When you have a thought that feels bad, you just ask yourself, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? It's a yes or no answer. If the answer is yes, that's a real fear. It's a rational fear. Get out of the road before the truck runs you over. If the answer is no, which it will be 99.9% of the time, and the end you go, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes that I'm running late for this doctor's appointment? No, feels bad. But what it does is it keeps you out of fight or flight.
Hmm.
We automatically go into fight or flight. Our stress levels go up because the cortisol levels go up, the norepinephrine, all of that. We lose clarity because the blood drains from our brain, goes to our heart and our extremities so we can run away from the perceived fear, like we're running away from an appointment that we're running late to.
Yeah.
But the body doesn't know any differently. And when we can do that, not only does that help us have clarity, keep our clarity, but also it helps us from a medical perspective because we all know the root cause of all disease and illness is chronic inflammation. Well, chronic inflammation comes as a result of stress and
Mhm.
extra stress hormones being released in the body. The beauty with the 2-minute rule is you can use it unlimited times in a day. It works in every situation. It's free and it's convenient because it works anywhere your brain is, and your brain's usually with you wherever you are. Furthermore, it's hard for us to be able to receive spirit guidance when we're stressed, when we're in fear, because it's a low vibration. Spirit's communicating on the high vibration channels because it doesn't have the density of a body. So that communication is coming through. We're just not able to receive it. I say those are the I feel crappy channels. It's like, you're tuned to a high vibration channel, classical music or disco. I grew up during the disco era. You can't listen to disco music and be in a bad mood. It's not possible. Or you're on that high vibration channel, or you're on the whiny old country music channels where they're complaining about mama, the truck, and the dog. Well, those are the I feel crappy channels. Spirit communication is hard to receive when you're on that channel. It's being broadcast. It's like
Mhm.
satellite TV shows are being broadcast. If your signal goes out, those shows are still being broadcast. You just can't receive them. And it's the same thing. So the 2-minute rule, it's become a habit for me, Nicole. So if I have a thought that feels badly, I'll immediately go into, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? And, it's always Ryan, quit being such a drama queen. And it keeps me out of fight or flight, which helps me stay in a high vibration that feels
Yeah.
good. And then I attract more good feeling
Yeah.
things. It's really that
Very
simple.
helpful. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that.
you bet.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is that knowing like obviously stress is like the root cause of all of our problems. And I remember I started freaking out when this happened. Like my cortisol level
Sure.
shot through the roof. My perimenopause was not happy about that. I was just like looking at my boyfriend. I'm like, what am I gonna do? And I was like, he's like, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. And I was like, I just need to just chill for a second, And I
Right.
had to do something that completely took me out of like that stress mode. So this
Right.
tool would have come in very handy for me a couple weeks ago, when this all went down. But thank you so much, Julie, for coming on the show and for sharing all of your wisdom with us today. To everyone out there, don't forget, you can get her book for free. If you go and sign up, we're going to keep the link in the description. So in the show notes, you'll find the link for the book. You can either get an audio download or is it
Digital.
digital? Yeah.
Digital in Spanish and English.
Spanish and English. And you've also got a big event coming up in late October. Do you want to refresh our audience on what that is
Sure.
again?
Yeah, if you want to learn the buffet of psychicness, everybody can learn it. Just join us in Atlanta. It's October 24th through the 26th. We rent out a hotel. It's adjacent to the airport, free shuttle. It's a blast. It will be one of the most fun, interesting, enlightening, life enhancing weekends of your life. So come join us. People flying from all over the world for it. And it's so much fun. So come join us. And that's all at askjulieryan.com. Everything's
Perfect.
available there.
Okay, I will make sure that we have all those links for you guys. And of course, if you're looking to change your life in 3 days or less, don't forget that the 3-day 180 retreat is at the end of September, September 25th to the 28th in Vail, Colorado. We'd love to have you there. This is where we're going to align you to your future self. We're going to do whatever healing needs to happen, open the doors of transformation, and make it so seamless. It's like being on a slip and slide right into your future dreams. So come join us for that. We're going to be going very galactic at that retreat. I'd love to have you there. The application to sign up is down below as well in the show notes. Guys, thanks so much for joining me this week, and I'll be back with you next time.
Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.